Hey YouTube, it's the Drunken Kobold here, today with a review of the Dungeon Master Screen Wilderness Kit. I finally got mine along with my alt art cover of Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. I already did a review of Tasha's, so I won't be doing another one, but I haven't done a review of the Wilderness Kit yet, so this is what I wanted to do and take care of it. So, first you have your Wilderness Kit dust jacket. Venture into the wilds with this kit for the world's greatest role-playing game. Chart a course in the wilds. This kit equips the Dungeon Master with a screen and other tools that are perfect for running D&D adventures in the wilderness. The Dungeon Master screen features a gorgeous painting of fantasy landscapes on the outside, and useful rules references cover the inside. I feel like I should say useful rules and references, but useful rules references cover the inside of the screen with an emphasis on wilderness rules. So I'm assuming these are the wilderness rules from the Dungeon Master's Guide. Maybe some of the hazards from Tasha's. I have yet to actually look at it. I've just got it all opened and everything. The kit also includes the following: 5 dry erase sheets featuring hex maps, a food and water tracker, rules references, wilderness chases, wilderness journeys, and the actions you can take in combat. 27 cards that make it easy to keep track of conditions, initiative, and environmental effects. 1 box to hold the kit's cards. So this is just a dust jacket. Everything comes out of it nice and easy. And this will fit on your shelf nicely with the D&D adventure grid and the tactical maps reincarnated. So if you want to keep them in the dust jacket afterwards, you can. I already punched out the box. The box is your artwork from one of the panels of the DM screen. It folds together really simple. I'll just quickly take care of that now. Okay, so this goes like that. That goes like that. This goes like that there. This goes there, 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 folds over, folds over. It's not a very dexterous task to put this box together. It's very simple. It's very similar to putting the one from the Essentials kit together. Then those fold there. And just like that, the box is done. On this side you have the ampersand. Up here you have the Dungeons and Dragons name. And then you have the artwork that is on the box. Next, we'll look at the Dungeon Master screen. So this is the front panel that you get when you open the box. And as you open it, you can see that it is a complete panorama of a wilderness setting. It has a kraken, a green dragon, and either a white or a silver dragon in the mountains there. One thing I love about this artwork is if you look really closely, bring it in a little bit there, you can actually see that like this has brush strokes on it. So this was something that was painted on canvas and then copied to be printed for the Dungeon Master screen, and I absolutely love it as is. And yeah, no, like I just look at this and I'm like, ooh, this feels like it should be textured, and it's not textured. The texture is a lie. But it is still a very beautiful screen, and I think that this is going to be the screen that I run for most of my games. Let's open this up again. So on this side, you have your standard DM screen rules, setting DCs, tracking DCs, damage by level, etc. You have your conditions table, and where it changes from the Dungeon Master screen and the Dungeon Master screen reincarnated is over here. You have your weather table that you can roll on, your weather conditions, extreme cold, extreme heat, strong wind. They're found in the Dungeon Master's Guide. And then over here you have your travel pace, services, encounter distance, wilderness navigation. A lot of this is still found in the PHP and the Dungeon Master's Guide, so there isn't new information here. It's just presenting it in an easy to use format so that you don't necessarily have to haul out your Dungeon Master's Guide every time you want to use it. Next, we have we'll put that there. We have the status and initiative cards. So these are the status cards. On this side, you have the art for the status, and then the actual information for the status is on the back. Most of these are the art that we're already familiar with. However, we have 3 new ones: strong wind, extreme heat, and extreme cold. Like I said, those are found in the Dungeon Master's Guide. Extreme cold reads, if you're exposed to a temperature of 0 degrees Fahrenheit or lower, so if you're playing with the Celsius, that would be minus 32, I believe. That or minus 36, not 100% sure, but if you're exposed to a temperature of 0 degrees Fahrenheit or lower, you must succeed on a DC 10 Constitution saving throw at the end of each hour of exposure or gain 1 level of exhaustion. You automatically succeed on this save if you're immune or resistant to cold damage, or if you're wearing cold weather gear or other suitable protection. So that is a status that is very relevant in the Icewind Dale campaign, but not necessarily in any of the other campaigns. You might need it in Hoard of the Dragon Queen. I believe there is one area where it does get quite cold. Extreme heat, if you're exposed to a temperature of 100 degrees Fahrenheit or higher, you must succeed on a Constitution saving throw at the end of each hour of exposure or gain 1 level of exhaustion. The DC is 5 for the first hour and increases by 1 for each additional hour. So far the same as cold, just one's cold, one's hot. If you're wearing heavy clothing or medium or heavy armor, you have disadvantage on the saving throw. So there isn't like if you know you're lightly clothed, like you know you're walking around in shorts and a t-shirt, that the extreme heat isn't going to be as rough on you. You automatically succeed on the save if you're immune or resistant to fire damage, or if you drank water in the past hour. So this is stressing the importance of staying hydrated in a wilderness setting. Strong wind. A strong wind imposes disadvantage on ranged weapon attack rolls and wisdom perception checks that rely on hearing. A strong wind also extinguishes open flames and disperses fog. A flying creature in a strong wind must land at the end of its turn or fall unless the creature can hover or is otherwise being held aloft by magic. A strong wind in a desert can create a sandstorm that imposes disadvantage on wisdom perception checks that rely on sight. So those are the statuses that are found in the Dungeon Master's Guide. These are on perforated paper. You fold, you tear, and then you can put them in your tuck box that I assembled earlier. Other than that, there is nothing here that wasn't already in the Essentials kit other than the extreme cold, extreme heat, and strong wind. Next, we have the initiative cards, which feature artwork from the Dungeon Master screen. They are numbered 1 through 9 and state initiative here, as well as on this side of the card. What you do with these, same as the Essentials kit, fold, tear, and as your players roll initiative, you can hand them out. So you rolled highest, you get 1, 2, 3, 4, and it saves you having to write down who had what in what initiative order. I personally am a fan of the combat pads where you write your player's name and all that. But yeah, no, so like, you know, you have your 1. This is basically becomes ineffective once you have more than 10 participating in the encounter, unless you are making all monsters move on the same initiative, which is what I personally prefer to do. But, you know, even then, if you are the Dungeon Master and you're number 9, you can only have up to 8 players having this. In AL, that doesn't matter because you can only have up to 7. But overall, I think these are just a novelty item. I don't actually see a use for these because, like I said, I prefer combat pads. Most people prefer to just write it on a piece of paper. So there isn't really any advantage to these. One thing I will note is both the initiative cards and the condition cards, they are just on flimsy cardstock. They don't have any laminate protection, so they're not protected from water like, say, the spellbook cards or the magic item cards. So do keep that in mind if you are going to be using these. Next, you have your 5 dry erase sheets. The first one is Wilderness Journeys. This is actually new. This is not information that is in the DMG or in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. It may be in Xanathar's. Once again, not 100% certain, but it reads, this has journey cycles, random encounters, monuments, weird locales, food and water needs, tracking supplies, and foraging. So this kind of explains how to use your water tracking table, which is right here, your supply tracking table. It has your carried, you can mark off if you've used it, carried, mark off if you used it. This also applies to trail rations and water skins. So, and on the back is a hex map. So Wilderness Journeys, journey cycles. A journey takes place in cycles that each represent the days spent traveling in the wilderness. The Dungeon Master first decides whether the journey is short or long, depending on how long it will take the characters to reach their destination. So if it's a short destination, takes a day, maybe 2, you're going to use the short. If it's going to take a week, several weeks, you use long. The length of the journey determines how many days are represented by a cycle. Each cycle is 1 day for a short journey or 7 days for a long one. For each cycle, follow these steps in order. You determine your weather, your pace, your navigation, your encounters, supplies, and progress. To determine weather and pace, you use the tables on the Dungeon Master screen. Becoming lost. Travelers are unlikely to get lost when following an established path or road or within a landmark of sight. So say there's a giant mountain, you know the mountain that on this side of the mountain is the city. Even if you venture, you can get your bearings from looking at a mountain. That would be the landmark. This is when that doesn't happen. Here are the circumstances that can cause a group to lose its way. Weather that obscures the area, such as rain, snow, or fog. Traveling at night, even with light sources or dark vision. Dense forest. Traveling underground, so in, say, the Underdark. Traveling at sea while unable to see the sky or any familiar land. So, say you're at sea, you don't see any islands, all of a sudden, after a couple days, it's overcast. You know the boat has come into a current. You're not sure where the current has taken you because you can't navigate using stars, sunlight, or whatever, and you're now lost at sea. Random encounters. If a random encounter occurs, the DM can roll on a table in a book like Xanathar's Guide for Everything or use the wilderness encounter table here. So that means that this is not in Xanathar's guide to everything, but there are tools in Xanathar's guide to everything that you could use here. So you have your wilderness encounter, you roll a d8. One alone powerful creature appears. So on land, that could be a dragon, that could be a manticore. At sea, it could be a kraken, a dragon turtle, a plesiosaur. 2 to 4 hostile creatures prowl nearby. So that could be wolves, that could be bears, goblins, any sort of creature that is nearby. Could also mean sharks in the ocean. Your boat is now surrounded by like mako sharks or great whites. Really fun encounter to have with the players, especially since they're in the boat. It's really, really hard to hit, something in the water. 5 to 6, a group of friendly travelers cross the group's path. The travelers have 2d6 goods for sale. They cost 1 GP or less on the adventure gear in the player's handbook. So say they're out in the wilderness, they're lost, they come across a group. The DM can look at the guy and say, okay, these guys have this gear here for sale. It costs this much. The group discovers a monument. Roll on the monuments table. Monument table is found on the back here. There are 15 things that can be found. 1 is sealed burial mound or pyramid. 2 is plundered burial mound or pyramid, and that could on its own lead to a nice encounter with a mummy or a zombie. Face is carved into a mountainside or cliff. Getting some serious Mount Rushmore feeling there. Giant statues carved out of a mountainside or cliff. So you get the picture. There's different monuments that humans or nature has created over time that they can encounter using the wilderness encounter table. And then 8 is a group wanders into a strange place. Roll on the weird locales table. So we have 1 to 2, a dead magic field similar to an anti-magic field. So you're walking and then all of a sudden your wizard cannot cast spells in this area. Maybe it is an anti-magic field. Maybe it's been blessed or cursed by a god. Who knows? Wild magic zone. Roll on the wild magic surge table in the player's handbook. So that is, I believe, in the sorcerer class. Whenever a spell is cast within the zone. Boulder carved with talking faces. So that's obviously something that's been enchanted by magic. Floating earth moat with a tower on it. So those artworks where you see a giant chunk of earth flying in the sky and it's got a tower. Something like that. Food and water. Creatures require units of food and water every cycle. The food and water needs table lists the number of food units and water units a creature requires per cycle. So a small creature requires 1 unit, a medium creature requires 1 unit, and a gargantuan creature like a dragon requires 64 units. So there are, so you can know how long it's going to take to get there. So like say it's a long cycle, a 7-day journey. Food cost per long cycle is for a medium creature 3 gold, 5 silver pieces. You could also buy 7 days of rations from the PHB. I don't know what's cheaper. I believe the rations might be, but tracking supplies, use the accompanying supply tracker. So that is this again. To note whether you are tracking a short or long cycle journey and how many units of food and water you are carrying. At the supply step of each cycle, mark off a box for each unit of food and water consumed. A character unable to eat or drink, so if you've eaten but you haven't drank, or you've drank but you haven't eaten, gains 1 level of exhaustion for each requirement they fail to meet. Exhaustion gained in this way cannot be removed until the player is able to consume sufficient food and water. So magic is not going to save you, rest is not going to save you. Foraging. Characters can hunt or gather food and water while the party travels at a normal or slow pace. A foraging character makes a wisdom survival check against a DC determined by the terrain. See foraging table on the DM screen. So that's back here on this DM screen. This will not be in your Dungeon Masters Reincarnated screen or any of your module specific screens. On a successful check, the character gathers units of food equal to 1d6 plus their wisdom modifier. So that would be up to 11 units of food. Repeat the roll for drinkable water. So this is actually a really good set of rules that I think I'll be using a lot in my campaigns. I have a lot of travel in my campaigns, and other than, you know, rolling for encounters and, you know, meeting other travelers, I think this is actually a really good tool set that I'm going to be using a lot of. Wilderness chases. I'm not going to go over this. This is the same chase rules that are in the Dungeon Master's Guide. It has that a monster or an animal can chase you. It also has role reversal where you can chase and hunt them. So that is actually a really cool add-on to the game mechanics. And I actually have to admit, even though it's been available in the Dungeon Master's Guide, I haven't done a lot of that in any of my campaigns. Actions in combat. These are already all the actions that you know: attack, cast a spell, dash, disengage, etc. These are all in your PHP. Other activity on your turn. I don't know if this is in the PHP, so I am going to mention this. Your turn can include a variety of flourishes that require neither your action nor your move. You can communicate however you are able through brief utterances and gestures as you take your turn. You can interact with one object or feature of the environment for free. If you want to interact with a second object or environmental feature, such as a log or a boulder, you must use your action to do so. This also has a hex map on this side. All the hex maps are labeled 1 through 100, and this is a double-sided hex map. Honestly, I don't know what the purpose of having multiple hex maps is unless you have multiple locations, but the fact that this is double-sided effectively means you only have 4 hex maps instead of, I believe you only had 4 to begin with. Let me check here. Yeah, you only had 4, so this effectively means you have 3. This retails for $33.95 Canadian. I'm not sure on the US value. Let me check here. MSRP is $24.99 for US and $33.99 for the Canadians. It is comparable in price to the Essentials kit. So for its cost, you know, I like that it has, you know, the rules and everything. I would have preferred if, like the Essentials kit, it came in a box and it had a little book in there that had these rules and perhaps a campaign that, like, you know, utilize these rules. The initiative cards in the tuck box are no different than the Essentials kit. The only thing that brings this up quality-wise from the Essentials kit is the Dungeon Master screen. The Dungeon Master screen is much better quality than the Essentials kit, but overall for price, I do still feel like this product is a little lacking. It's still a good product. A lot of this, like I said, is in the Dungeon Master's Guide, but it's a lot easier to, you know, have a printout with your books rather than a whole nother book. Overall, I give this product an 8 out of 10 for what it is. Like, these are still really good items. The fact that these are dry erase. The hex map is good for miniatures. You can plot your encounters here, and I know a lot of people prefer hex maps for encounters instead of the square grids, so that is helpful. Like I said, though, why these are on, you know, multiple pieces like this, unless, you know, you're trying to do separate encounters, not really relevant. It would have been much better if you just had, you know, 4 hex maps on a piece of paper like this that were all entwined, all connected, and you folded them, and maybe some artwork on the back, and, you know, that you've foregone this whole actions and combat chapter. That's just my opinion. Not everybody is going to agree with it, but at the same time, you know, there's going to be a lot of people who don't disagree either. So like I said, you know, an 8 out of 10 for what the product is, but the fact that it is comparable in cost to the Essentials kit and doesn't include a campaign, doesn't include dice, doesn't include a hardcover box to keep things in. Like I said, you're just keeping it in this dust jacket here. That brings it down to like a 7 in my opinion. Once again, not everybody is going to agree or disagree with me. That said, do you agree with my assessment of the Wilderness Kit Dungeon Master screen? If you do or don't, let me know in the comments down below. If you feel I deserved it, leave a like and possibly subscribe. I have a lot of new books coming in the very near future that I will be unboxing and opening on the channel, as well as reviewing, so do stick around for those. And yeah, no, so like I always say, may the rolls be with you, and cheers everyone.